Welcome to How to Open Your Presentation with Impact. You have my personal guarantee that if you listen live or in person, pay attention and implement just a handful of what you will learn, you will become a better presenter. Later, you can discover how I could be your personal speech coach 24/7. And in case we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, you haven't watched me online, I have enjoyed a 35 plus year career as a professional speaker, delivering over 3,000 presentations on 5 continents, and now, of course, hundreds of times online. For over 25 years, I've been helping executives, engineers, sales teams, ambitious professionals, and celebrity speakers up their game and get more results by perfecting their presentations. However, this event is all about how you can be more effective. I will now pass this over to Paul, who is our moderator. He is the Director of Client Experience for Fripp VT. He will tell you how you can ask us questions and answer polls and bring up the first poll. Take it away, Paul.
Hello, everyone. On the right-hand side of your screen, you will see a chat box. Within that chat box, you'll be able to enter your short, specific questions throughout the call. Make sure to ask the questions sooner rather than later so we'll have plenty of time to cover them during the live call. In addition to your short, specific questions, you might be asked to enter your favorite opening lines later. That's also where you'll place them. And we also have some polling questions that we'll put up. And I'll bring up the first one now. It'll appear in the same location as the chat box. So just click your answer, click vote, and then we'll discuss the results when they come up.
And of course, the poll asks them, Paul, very simple questions, but important.
Are you a business sales presenter or a speaker coach consultant?
And it's just a matter of, we understand with well over 500 people who've registered for this webinar, we only have responses for those of you who are live. And it does not matter which category you fit in or find yourself in, you will get information. So let's start with the first, perhaps little known secret. And that is that whatever you decide to do with your career, speaking will improve the results you get. Very often people totally overlook the power of good presentation skills. Earlier in my career, I saw a research from the IBM company that said 72% of the individuals within their workforce who could speak without notes made considerably higher salaries than those who needed notes. Now, I'm not telling you you're not ever going to use notes, but it does mean that those who are better presenters will have more impact. Now, Paul, what are the results of our first poll?
Well, we have 72% are speaker coach consultants and 28% are business and sales presenters.
Well, wonderful. And we do understand that even some professional speakers and those who would put themselves as coaches and consultants, of course, came from the business world, and everybody has to sell their services. Everyone is welcome. Good. Paul will bring up the next poll. We're just curious if you are familiar with me, if you've heard me speak, watched me online, or if you somehow just heard about this webinar. Now, the second, what I would call little known secret, is all speaking is public speaking. So often people say to me, Patricia, I'm not a professional speaker. Well, if you consider this, we are all professional speakers. Because if you want to sell more, there's a certain, whether it's online or in person, the higher quality of your presentations, the more you will get paid from your compensation. If you are a leader in an organization, then certainly you get results which increase the stock price through the results of your company and selling the strategy and making people feel important. If you are a consultant or coach who speaks to get business, you are getting paid. Even if you don't have a fee, you are getting paid by the work that is generated and the clients generated from your presentations. Now, Paul, how many people know me?
Well, we have 31% have seen you live and in person, 40% have seen you virtually, and only 29% have not seen you speak before.
Well, isn't this wonderful? 29% of what I call virgin frippies. You have never heard anything that you are about to hear. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And the third little known secret, whatever category that you are in, is you get paid for what you know. You get paid better when you deliver it well. Now, let's get to the subject of just one aspect of your presentations. It's in these webinars, because we do honor your time, we are trying to focus on just one area. There will certainly be other areas of presentations we will invite you to, but this is opening with impact, because perhaps another little known secret is most professionals, whether it's the business world, professional speakers, leaders of organization, or even speaking chapters, usually have weak openings compared to once they get in the body of what they know. With my corporate clients, without exception, and I'll say this, without exception, and this is going over 25 years, the number one area that I have to help professionals with is, Patricia, we got the body of our speech together. How on earth are we going to open? So, Paul, why don't we bring up our PowerPoint that we have prepared just to make this easier and simpler? And yes, we can make this available to you. And you do have special bonuses that will come with the replay. One is even more content as it comes to opening lines. So the techniques, you can start with a question. Now, whether it is a meeting, a small meeting, or whether it is a presentation, these principles work both ways. Let's just imagine you are, if you're a consultant or a coach, and you're having a meeting with a client or a leadership team, you could start with a question. It could be something as simple as, what have our results been? Could be very simple, something like that. And then you could say, if, or as we look at the results, we have to qualify this in 3 different categories. Now, that would be the categories that you come up with. One of them needs to be what would be totally overlooked. And it could be the difference that it makes in the attitude and commitment to their associates. If you were giving a speech, now my particular favorite, if I'm giving a question as an opening, it would be more rhetorical. If I were to ask you, is 2017 the year you absolutely guarantee that you quadruple the quality of your presentations? Perhaps you'd say yes. Perhaps you would say no. Most likely you would say, Patricia, I would love it to be, can you tell me how? Well, congratulations, we're at the right place at the right time. Let's roll up our sleeves, and in the next 45 minutes, you will learn. So every opening that's presented this way, look at what would your 3 categories be. And the last one is definitely what you hope they are thinking. And please notice, put your name into that. So you're putting almost quotation marks around what they would say. Patricia, can you tell me how? You can certainly put my name in your presentation, but ideally it is your name. And this is a way to make sure that people remember who you are. Because even if you're going to be introduced, even if your name is on the cover slide, if this is a presentation, it is amazing how people forget who we are. So that might be one way. An interesting statistic or little known fact. What you might do is add an emotion with the statistic. Would it surprise you to know that 72% of individuals, or would it horrify you to know? And that could be something about waste. It could be, how about this in a company? Would it horrify you to know that 56% of your associates do not believe you listen to their suggestions? It could be, would it shock you to know that if you got some horrific, really shocking information, depending, I work a lot with organizations who help modern day slavery, eliminate it, of course, or something to do with the environment or disease. Now, perhaps as a fundraiser, you might also say, would it please you to know that 98% of your contribution for this event goes to curing leukemia? Whatever you want to do. So an interesting statistic or little known fact. Now, if you have heard me before, the 29% who never have, I know you have never heard this, which is one of my personal favorite examples. Because opening your presentation with impact, if you use an interesting statistic or little known fact from your audience's world, not yours, it is a great way to immediately build your credibility. And part of why we focus so much on opening with impact, if you can immediately engage the audience, break their distraction, arouse interest in your subject, and build your credibility, that will build your confidence. Remember, nobody sees how you feel, they only see how you act. We always want to act confidently. However, when you get a good response up front, you really have confidence. You have a real connection. And this is when I spoke for the Seventh-day Adventist pastors. It was a morning seminar, the last day of their conference in Southern California, 350 in attendance. And I know what the audience must have been thinking, even a generous audience. Her session is how to design and deliver a more charismatic sermon. She's the only person on the program who isn't a minister. How can anyone who isn't a minister help me improve my sermons I write one every week? And I bet she isn't even a Seventh-day Adventist, which I'm not. My opening line, I walked out and said, 465 times in the Bible, it said it came to pass. It did not say it came to stay. And unless your sermon is well constructed, artfully crafted, and charismatically delivered, it will not come to stay in the hearts, minds, and lives of your congregation. And if you have never heard 350 Seventh-day Adventist pastors say amen, hallelujah, after less than a minute of your presentation, you have not had a great audience. Bottom line, please notice, one, I did not think of that line as my foot hit the stage. You need to know how you are going to open your presentation. Then, notice I did not deliver it too fast, because it is the quality of the words that make the impact. And at the beginning of your presentation, we need to slow down to give our audience the chance to get used to the sound of our voice and our accent, because we all have accents to somebody. Then how about a story or an example? And a story is a great way if you are giving a presentation. If you are reporting to senior management, or if you have a meeting with your decision-making client and they're giving you 10 minutes, I do not suggest you start with a story. It would probably take too long unless you could do it in a story within 2 or 3 sentences, which is possible. With a story, and this is also a novice mistake, you do not tell your audience, I am about to tell you a story. It's rather like if you start with a quotation. You don't say, I am going to start with a quote from whoever. No, you just launch the quote or launch in the story. So, for example, I might say, never forget the first time I met Larry Mariottini. It was 10:45 on a Tuesday in 1972. All right, I'm taking you straight to the scene. Or it could be, the email said, Dear Patricia. Now you understand, I could also have told you with both those examples. One, earlier in my career, I was a men's hairstylist at a time that there were few hairstylists, and I was probably the first woman in San Francisco. I worked with, you see, you don't need to know. Our friend Michael Haig, who is a story consultant in Hollywood, he always says, get into the scene late. And so many of us, we have a good story. However, we spend too much waffle in a way before we get to the scene. And frequently, you will hear me quote movie examples. And I have, as part of my personal commitment to my craft, I attended probably a dozen screenwriting classes. Not that I have the talent or the patience to be a screenwriter. However, you've got to admit, Hollywood knows how to tell a good story. So a story, an example, get into the scene late. And what makes a story really impactful is when you give your characters a backstory. You need to know a little about them. So, for example, if you had met me when I was a little girl growing up, all right, that is a way I have brought you into my story. So it's my story, but it's engaging the audience. And then we need to answer the question very soon, how old are you in the scene? Because a little girl could be 3, could be 6, could be 9, might even be considered 12. So you need to be specific. And I need to tell you, it's a small town in England. People from small towns in England have a different point of view than a small town in America. So give your clients, you give your characters a backstory, and when they speak, deliver the dialogue. You don't report on the dialogue. So, for example, Mary walked in the boss's office and said, "Boss, we got a problem in the ER." Now, reporting on the dialogue is Mary walked into her boss's office and told him that they had a problem in the ER. It's easier to get more energy and passion and emotion when you deliver the dialogue. So stories. And of course, stories are a very important part of communicating. Then you can make a statement. For example, I frequently ask presentations. I start presentations with, it never ceases to amaze me that intelligent, well-educated, ambitious professionals frequently overlook developing the number one skill that is absolutely guaranteed to position them ahead of the crowd. And then, of course, I go on with transport the audience. Now, we transport the audience. We can take them forward or we can take them back. taking them forward would be, imagine it is. So imagine it is September the 21st, 2018. Or it could go, certainly taking them back as if you'd met me when I was a little girl in England. Or let's go back to 2012, June the 3rd. You're taking them back. You're launching them to a different time and place. You could also say, I wish you had been there. You are transporting the audience. So, Paul, before we go to the next slide, which is specific opening lines, do we have any specific questions or comments I should address?
Well, we did have a question about the putting your name on a presentation. I'm assuming that is in the, like you did at the beginning, if we haven't had the pleasure of being introduced. So the question was, where do they put their name in the presentation?
Well, there are lots of issues. So one, if you are delivering a presentation at a conference, there is a very good chance you will be introduced and you write your own introduction. And probably your name would be on your opening slide. It wouldn't be the main part, but it would be on your, it'd probably be on your opening slide. If it is, for example, a breakout session at a convention and you have to introduce yourself, which frequently happens, one, I would talk to the audience ahead of time. It's what I call be your own warm-up act. You schmooze the audience. And then I would always walk out and use one of the opening techniques. And of course, there are certainly more, but here is some very popular ones. And then after you've got the audience attention, you've given them information, you've proved there's a certain performance level to this, then you say, in case we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Patricia Fripp. And then, executive speech coach, sales presentation skills trainer, and in the next 90 minutes, your personal speech coach. That would be another way. If this is certainly an environment you're comfortable, so for example, the American Payroll Association has been a 20-year client. I deliver 3 breakout sessions at every convention as well as other work. And I usually say, as a speaker, I'm usually introduced. However, I will now introduce myself as if I were somebody else. You will applaud profusely, and then I will start. And of course, I get a laugh, and I say, we are thrilled to have our keynote speaker deliver a breakout session. And, I'll introduce myself, then I'll walk to a different part of the stage and then say, Mary had a problem. Or I immediately start into the presentation. If this is perhaps a sales presentation, and usually even in a sales presentation for a company, I would recommend you have a champion that got you speaking to your management. And what you would do is say, John, I really appreciate that you set up this appointment with your economic buyer, and we both want this to go well. May I suggest that you introduce me this way? As you know, we are searching for the perfect coach too, and we have identified Patricia Fripp as one of our 3 top trainers to be considered. So set it up, give a little of your credentials. Now, just say you are ushered in, and you have to present yourself, I would always, in that case, say congratulations. Say something nice about them, and then thank you for the opportunity to be considered as, and then introduce yourself. Again, say something of interest to the audience. Is that all, Paul?
Well, we have one, can we use props to take the user back in time? Could be a slide of that time period or pulling out an article of clothing, etc.
You can do whatever you like. This is your presentation. With props can add to or distract from or add great impact. And I suggest, if you have not used it before, that you do a dry run with some of your friends. So anything can be effective. If you could say, if you know me when I was a little girl growing up in a small town in England, you could certainly show an image of what you look like then. Be aware that your visual aids need to enhance the presentation, reinforce it, and not distract. But one of the more modern techniques is visually show what you are saying. Good. All right, Paul, any more?
We have one more. Let's see here. Can you give an example of the quote statement technique?
Well, yes, the one example was, "It never ceases to amaze me." Now, a quote could be, "The first day I went to work, my father pushed me out the door and said, 'In your career, don't concentrate on making a lot of money, but rather concentrate on becoming the type of person people want to do business with. And most likely, you will make a lot of money.'" My entire business career has been focused on my father's philosophy. And if we have the idea that we need to take every single penny that our prospects have to give us, rather than let's look long term. So that might be an example. So Paul, let's move on to our specific opening lines. And let's look at, this is what I call an internal meeting. If you speak within your company, it could be, if you're a coach or a consultant going in, of course, it could be online, and it could be just audio, it could be a webinar, because we have multiple ways to have meetings and give presentations. And remember, even if your audience is only one, it's all public speaking. There is no private speaking. The purpose of this meeting is to, now perhaps you're going to have some pleasantries. When you're speaking to busy clients, get to the point fast. So, good morning, John. Hope you're well. The purpose of this meeting is to update you on the project that we're working with. Now, again, in sales, or it could be perhaps you're speaking at a company meeting. You could have 10 minutes at one of your client meetings. It would be, "Thank you for the opportunity too." It's a great way. Now, also, let's look at, you can combine many of these openings together. You might tell a story or quote or make a statement, then say, "Thank you for the opportunity to deliver my point of view of how you can be more powerful presenters." So don't feel free to play with these and combine them. Again, if you're a consultant or a coach or an internal meeting or leading your own team or reporting to your senior management without being terrified, you will remember at our last meeting. In other words, this meeting is put in the context for the entire year or the term of the project. Thank you for your support with. Now, again, feel free to put in the notes when you might use these. Thank you for support with raising money for the Red Cross. Or, thank you for your support with your introduction to other key associates. Now, that could also be in an email. Remember, we have multiple ways to communicate. With a sales presentation, or it could be a team project. It could be with one of your coaching teams or one of your clients. Congratulations. Always work on the principle your audience is more interested in themselves than they are in you. And by congratulating them for an area that they are proud of is good. We have an amazing opportunity That could be the opening of a presentation. And again, it might be the second line, or after you've told a story, it could be, we have an amazing opportunity to look for ways to position ourselves ahead of the crowd. And as you are wise enough to know, good presentation skills are no longer a nice skill to have. It can be a matter of business life and death. Or there will never be a more perfect time to position yourself ahead of the crowd. All right, Paul, there will also, because these are internal, if you're selling an idea to your coaching clients, to your consulting clients, to your management, there will never be a more perfect time is a great way. And again, when I deliver in-person sessions, I frequently ask, raise your hand if you have weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly meetings. People put their hands up. Keep them up if you genuinely look forward to attending. All hands go down unless it's a couple of people who want to get a laugh. These are some of the lines that you can start to prove we are upping the quality of our presentations. All right, Paul, you beat me to it. I was going to go next. I like Paul to get actively involved in this. Perfect. Paul, any more specific questions?
Well, we did have one from Donna. She said, please clarify the timing of getting to the scene in the storytelling intro.
You are going to get into the scene, hopefully, in the first two lines. We got out of the helicopter. Oh, Mary had a problem. What are you immediately thinking? Who's Mary? What's her problem? As a general rule, if you can't do it in the first line, do it in the second line. We need to know, where are you? When are you? When is this happening? Who are the characters? And then what happens? And we need to do it as fast as possible. Imagine is the perfect example of transporting the audience to a different time and place. Again, this is reinforcing what you've heard would interest, surprise, amaze you to know. And we recommend that you do that before an interesting statistic or little known fact. If I were to ask you, that's the rhetorical question. And I suggest you play with these. Again, even if you have an opening that works, it's a matter of falling in love with your own content again. Getting excited about a new way to have impact. I wish you could have been there. You heard that. That is a fabulous way to engage the audience and take them somewhere fun. And at one of our coaching camps, somebody said, I took the idea, I wish you could have been there at my father's funeral. And I said, well, that is not a good opening line at this point. Now, you could use it as part of your close after you've delivered your speech of how wonderful your father's life was, how he was 96 years old, how he'd seen all his children and grandchildren be successful. Then you could say, I wish you could have been there at his funeral. The church was packed. Everyone said it was more like a wedding than a funeral. We were there to celebrate a well-lived life. Then it would work, but not at the opening. Because again, you can use these lines as a transition from one segment to the other. We hope you see the practicality of that. I worked with, it was the most exhilarating moment of your life, a celebrity who had won major international awards 3 times for winning in this special event. And he had a high-priced, high-fee presentation for a major Fortune 100 company. And he didn't have a speech. And he hadn't been speaking much. So we locked ourselves in a room, and I said, you cannot leave until we got the end of this speech, because he was delivering it a couple of days later. I talked to him a couple of days in advance. I said, your opening line is, it was the most exhilarating moment of my life. Now, when was it? And that was because in Hollywood, they called the opening of a movie the flavor scene. So we have to flavor the presentation. In his case, it was the second time he won this major award, which made it already more fascinating because you would expect the first time would be the most exciting. How often have you? Now, many people start with a question. They say, how often have you stood up in front of an audience to speak and forgotten what to say? Now, if you say, how often, most people will say, have you ever? I always say, how often have you, for the simple reason, if you've been in a situation once and lived through it, I don't need your advice. But how often have you walked into a room with strangers you wanted to meet and not know how to start a conversation? Now it happens more than once. I need your advice. And again, Mary had a problem. This is a way, get into the scene late. Who's Mary? She was a senior vice president of sales. All right, that's her backstory. What was her problem? She was looking at the sales results and realized in the last quarter. Okay, Paul can, in fact, I'm doing it myself. Next slide. There we are. Good. Any questions or comments, Paul?
Absolutely. From Pat, how would you deal with someone on the back row who is chatting to their neighbor during your scintillating presentation?
Oh, right. Well, if it's the Pat I know in England, hi. Okay. Well, with distractions, you can either ignore them or incorporate them. And with something, a situation like that, a lot depends on the size of the audience. If it was a fairly small audience, you might stop talking, and then they would probably stop talking because people would be more aware of them. And you say, we really appreciate interaction, and if you have any comments, please feel free to share them with us all. If it's a large audience, you could say, this is a perfect time for you to turn to your neighbor and say, what I love most about this presentation, or what I learned before I walked in. Or you could pause and say, if at any point you feel you have an emergency or need to handle a personal situation, please feel free to leave. We don't take it personally. Go. Now, one technique with an opening came from one of my clients and next door neighbor, Mike Powell. At the time, he was a senior scientist with Genentech. He was working on developing an AIDS vaccine. And I said, Mike, I want you to come and speak to my Women's Breakfast Club about the work you're doing developing an AIDS vaccine. And remember, we don't spend time with scientists. And if we did, we probably wouldn't know what they were talking about. Can you tell us, what is it like being a scientist? And his opening was, and again, you can use this formula. I've used it with other clients. Being a scientist is like doing a jigsaw puzzle in a snowstorm at night, when you don't have all the pieces you're trying to create. And so when you don't have all the pieces and you don't have the picture you're trying to create. So being a scientist, and also notice, very much like the Seventh-day Adventist pastor opening, you want it to be short phrases. And if you were writing this on a piece of paper to rehearse, to get in your body, write it down the page. The written word is for the eye. The spoken word is for the rhythm. Being a scientist is like doing a jigsaw puzzle in a snowstorm at night when you don't have all the pieces and you don't have the picture you're trying to create. I would challenge you to do as well with your profession. It would be a great way you could open a presentation. And then, of course, towards the end, I said, Mike, see if you can tie your presentation in a circular technique. And what we had him say was, at the beginning of my presentation, you heard the frustration of being a scientist. So many people ask, why would you do it? And then he had an amazing story, which we will not go into at this moment. So, Paul, can you make sure I fill the screen to answer any specific questions that our audience might have? Are there any questions, Paul?
As of right now, there aren't any additional questions, no.
Well, good. Well, let us pose one that at this point we usually get. Patricia, this is fascinating. How could we get more information from you? Well, certainly we provide plenty of information, and once you have registered for a webinar, we'll invite you to others. We will have some materials to send you. And Paul, what will they be getting as bonuses?
I'm sorry, another question came in.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm making Paul multitask. So one, we have opening lines, and have we planned to give them our speech infographic, or is that for another time?
No, we have that they'll be getting that in the confirmation email after the webinar.
Okay, perfect. What's the question? Feel free, if you've got an opening line, this is the time to send it in.
All right, Eric, can you please talk about using you phrasing versus we, especially in the sales presentation context?
Yes, we can, and we certainly have delivered other webinars on sales. You focus language. Now, what Eric is talking about is, of course, how you make an emotional connection to an audience. And one of the reasons that we focus on openings is because when you immediately engage them, you are more likely to make an emotional connection. One of the ways that you can make emotional connection is by using more you-focused language rather than I-focused language. In other words, you don't say, I'm going to talk about, it's what you will hear, what you will learn. Now, the formula I recommend, and again, it's a formula you adapt for sales presentations, is congratulations. Your latest advertising campaign is superb. Then, thank you for the opportunity to discuss how the Fripp presentation skills training could be exactly what you're looking for. In case we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Patricia Fripp, and in my role as your personal speech coach, you can feel confident that based on my 35 plus years of experience, there is no situation that I have not helped clients just like you solve. John has been very generous with his time and information preparing me for this meeting. And he said, your 3 specific challenges are bullet, 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 or your 3 specific areas of interest are bullet, 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 or your 3 greatest opportunities come from bullet, bullet, bullet. And then you structure your presentation around their challenges, opportunities, or areas of interest. Hope that helps. And with that, Paul, why don't we show everybody what do we make available? We make a lot available. However, if you are really interested in taking your presentation skills to a whole next level, and if you would like Fripp to be your personal speech coach 24 hours a day and absolutely 100% guarantee in any speaking situation, you are going to do well. That you always know how to open with impact. You always know how to connect to an audience and tell compelling stories and be as specific as you need to be clear, concise, and credible. So what Paul is going to quickly show you is our Fripp virtual training, which is my highly interactive, web-based training designed for everybody, whether you're an ambitious professional, a leader, a professional speaker, or a sales presenter. So, Paul, as we've been discussing openings, why don't we go over to the training center, and of the 15 different courses, which are made up in different chapters, we will just show you a quick sample of your opening options.
Welcome to You Have Choices, Options of Openings, the Techniques. In this course, you will learn you have dozens of opening techniques to choose from, all with samples of how you can use them. If you're ready, click the Start Training button. Welcome to You Have Choices, Options of Openings, the Techniques. As you soon will come to discover, our subtitle is How to Open Your Presentation with Impact. At the beginning of a speech, presentation, seminar, client meeting, report to senior management, sales presentation, or any manner of presentation you deliver, you need to arouse interest in the subject.
All right, Paul, my little sound.
To listen to your presentation, you have 30 seconds to command the attention of your audience. Don't waste it. Certain speech openings captivate, mystify, and create an emotional bond that keeps an audience in the palm of the speaker's hand. What would you give to learn those essential opening words and techniques?
All right, so what you will find, and that's fine, Paul. So let's take us back and go back to the PowerPoint. So we can, if you would like to have a trial of the Fripp virtual training, we offer you a chapter on openings, a chapter on sales, and a chapter on stories. And Paul will just bring up our PowerPoint. Yes, and then we will go back to your questions, comments, and opening lines.
And actually, while I'm bringing up the PowerPoint, Leanne had a quick question. How do you recommend that introverts learn to present with passion while still being authentic, since they're not natural, quote, salespeople?
Some of the best sales professionals I've had the privilege of working with, and of course I spend a good portion of my life these days with introverted engineers who are totally brilliant, and this might not seem the second nature to them. And also, if you look at the speaking consulting world, one of my Patricia colleagues for many years in The Odd Couple is Alan Weis, who is a total introvert, a brilliant speaker, an outrageously successful speaker and consultant. And he's an introvert. He says you can tell the difference between an introvert and extrovert by asking this question: would you rather stay home and read a good book or go to a cocktail party? He says, I would rather stay home and read a bad book I've read before. So you see, for me, it's easy to schmooze with my audience ahead of time. For other people, it's more difficult because they are introverts and they have a different process to get ready to go on stage. what we have to do is learn to be comfortable in the environments where we make our living. That doesn't mean it's necessary second nature. For an introvert, you would need more downtime, or you would need more time to psych up. It's a matter of adapting to what we need to do to fill our professional capacity. So, Paul, do we have our PowerPoint?
Yes, we do. I'll just
Now,
skip.
can we go to the end? Yes, that's it. Good. That's it. No, go back one. Yes. So what we would invite you to do, if you like the Fripp advice and are even interested in perhaps having Fripp as a bigger part of your life, take a trial, frippvt.com. You will find you can do this on your phone, your tablet, your computer, and you will receive 1 chapter, 3 courses. So if you're clicking on something and say it's not coming up, that's because it's in the trial. And then if you want to make the very wise decision, and then feel free, if you would like to join, this is a very cost-effective way to have me as your speech coach. Use webinar as a coupon code to save 20%, which would mean your first month would be $237, and then $23.20 a month for as long as you want to be actively involved, whether it's 3 months or, like some clients, forever, because there are other benefits for being a member of Fripp Virtual Training. But to put this into context, a year's access to Fripp VT is the equivalent to 1 hour of personal coaching. And of course, a lot of my clients have a combination of the self-study with the personal coaching, which makes both a very effective way to increase the results you get very fast. So thank you for finding out how Fripp can be a more important part of your life. So with that, Paul, bring me back live and full screen to see if there are any more questions that I can answer or any opening lines to review.
Well, it's not so much a question or really their opening line, but it is one. Shelley said one of the best opening lines she's ever heard was 10 years ago. Carol Kent was speaking in front of 1,200 chatty women. After being introduced, Carol stepped out on stage, took a deep breath, and said, "Good morning, I'm Carol Kent, and I'm the mother of a murderer." The room fell silent for the next hour as she told the rest of her story.
Wow, now that is a great attention grabber. I was on a program with Newt Gingrich, and he said, and I've never forgotten, and this is years ago, if you were born today, you would already owe $198,000 to pay your share of the national debt. Now, what was good about that is that, one, he gave us an interesting statistic. He used you-focused language. He put us in it if you were born today. And an interesting statistic, and he didn't say I. And I don't care what political party you're from, you've got to admit that is a great opening. In my breakfast club I belong to, one of our members, who is a great speaker, used to be a police captain. And he said, as a young police officer, my sergeant said, "Kid, in this job, you've got a front row seat to the greatest show on earth." He said, after being in law enforcement for 30 years, I know he was wrong. We are in the center ring of the greatest show on earth. So that is a great metaphor, great way to certainly grab the audience's attention. Any other questions or comments, Paul?
No, that's all for now.
Well, thank you very much, whether you were live or in person, so live and in person, or as you watch this as the replay. We appreciate the opportunity to get to know you, especially the 29% who've never met me in any way. We hope that you will certainly watch the replay and tell your friends. Feel free to share the link. We will send with the replay the bonus items. We encourage you to take the benefit of my 35 years experience helping professionals in all fields perfect their presentations. Take a trial of Fripp VT, join, use webinar, and with that, I hope you will always remember Fripp. However, much more important than remembering me, remember what Fripp stands for. Frequently reinforce ideas that were productive and profitable. Thank you, Paul, and see you next time.